Hello, and welcome back to our conversations with Isaiah. I am the Reverend Nancy Springer, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, the Reverend David Matthews. And we continue our conversations. We're halfway through Isaiah chapter 65, beginning in verse 17. We're reading from the Common English Bible, but as you follow along, use whatever version you have in front of you. David, you want to start us off reading in verse 17?
Sure. As Nancy said, we're reading Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17 from the Common English Bible. Look, I'm creating a new heaven and new earth. Past events won't be remembered. They won't come to mind. Be glad and rejoice forever in what I'm creating, because I'm creating Jerusalem as a joy and her people as a source of gladness. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad about my people. No one will ever hear the sound of weeping or crying in it again. No more will babies live only a few days, or the old fail to live out their days. The one who dies at 100 will be like a young person, and the one falling short of 100 will seem cursed.
They will build houses and live in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They won't build for others to live in, nor plant for others to eat. Like the days of a tree will be the days of my people. My chosen will make full use of their handiwork. They won't labor in vain, nor bear children to a world of horrors, because they will be people blessed by the Lord, they along with their descendants. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. Wolf and lamb will graze together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. But the snake, its food will be dust. They won't hurt or destroy at any place on my holy mountain, says the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
All right. So, David, tie this back in, if you will, to the first part of this chapter. As we ended with in the previous session, past troubles will be forgotten and hidden from my sight. So let's start there and kind of continue this conversation with look.
So from our last section, the scriptures talk about the punishment and judgment upon idolaters. And we also hear of the blessing upon those who are faithful to God. And there seems to be this sense of a righting of past wrongs. And sometimes people think of it as that there's this punishment that will come upon the unrighteous and the blessing come upon the righteous. And that's the end of the story. But that's not the end of God's story, because God's not complete there. To bring punishment and mercy aren't just the end of God, but God is actually then doing something new. He's bringing reconciliation and restoration. So God here in this moment is talking about what comes after, if you will, the balancing of the scales of justice. And the answer is a new opportunity forward for everybody. It's new life. And so there is a new kingdom and a new earth, and the past wrongs, the past imbalances are forgotten. Things are made level, and now a new opportunity for life is given. And that's where we're at. The relationship with God is restored. The relationship of people one to another is restored. The relationship between people and creation is restored to what it should be. So we're seeing if you will, a return to the garden as it was before the incident of the apple, before the incident of rebellion. And that is humanity at its best in that briefest of moments. So here we see from that moment forward what that will be like, because it's hard for us to process the idea of eternity. In some recent TV shows that have talked about God or talked about heaven, they depict heaven as boring. They depict the relationship with God as mundane and irrelevant. They depict the idea of an eternity in heaven as almost torture, because you can have whatever you want, and so surely you're going to end in a world where all of your wants are met, and then you're going to become stupid. You're going to become foolish and almost like you're drunk, and it's awful. And so
Mhm.
here, though, we see something different because, in verse 18, be glad and rejoice forever in what I'm creating, because I'm creating Jerusalem as a joy and her people as a source of gladness. See, because all of these depictions of the new heaven and the a new heaven and a reality then depict it still without God himself. They depict it as
Right.
still humanity is the source of creation and love and life, and you need to be the originator of these things when you're not. It's God himself who is. And when we have inspiration, we need to remember that that inspiration is God's breath coming through us out into the world to create. But God is the source of that imagination. God is the source of
Right. Yeah.
that life and that idea. So heaven will never be boring because God himself does not stop creating. And so
Right.
consequently,
We will still have purpose in the new
mhm,
creation.
absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
things
You go.
will continue onward and we will be a part, and
Mhm.
we will still have purpose. And so in
Yeah.
that
I
we
mean,
life.
in the garden, right? God placed the man and the woman in the garden not to swing in hammocks and drink umbrella drinks all day, right? But to tend to the creation.
Mhm.
And in the new heaven and the new earth, we will still have a purpose to participate with God in creation, right? It says in verse 21, they will build houses and live in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. So there will still be this purpose of participating with God in the ongoing creative nature of creation, right? We're not going to sit on clouds playing harps for eternity. Where there's, unless you're a musician and then that's your purpose. Um, but we're gonna, right? There's gonna be creative work to do. However, uh, we are given the skills and the talents to do that in the new creation as we are in this life.
Absolutely. And that sense of purpose is something we all need because from a
Yeah.
purpose, from a job, we get value, we as people. We understand our relationship
Hmm.
with the world around us from our purpose, from our goal. One of the hardest things, even for pastors to have, is if we don't have a plan, if we don't have a goal, what is my job? Then we ourselves
Yeah.
start to struggle. One of the things that's hard again for pastors is the sense often of not being able to see the product of your hands. Like when I think of one of the most fulfilling jobs must be somebody who builds or creates or designs, because every short period of time they get to look at something that they made, some way in which
Hmm.
they created something, whether it be I helped build that building, or here is a little trinket that I made that somebody will purchase and give as a
Yeah.
gift, and they will help bless someone's life. Those people can look at something and say, I completed that. Um, People such
Yeah.
as teachers, they can look at their students and say at the end of the year, they can be like, each of these students is able to read better, is able to do math, do understand a little bit more about history, all these different things, because I fed their lives. And so consequently, they can weigh the
Hmm.
success of their job that way, the success of their life. And so that's a wonderful thing. We all have value. We all get fulfillment from our purpose. And that's
Yeah.
something we need to remember. That's not just part of our existence here, but it's part of our created purpose, our created existence. But
Forever and ever.
absolutely.
So,
Um,
David, where
Go ahead.
where do you hear this bit from Isaiah echoed in the New Testament?
Well, actually, I hear it both in the New Testament and in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, I actually hear an echo of this from the book of Jeremiah, where Jeremiah tells the people to plant, to God has taken you into this land of captivity, and you
Yep.
are to plant, you are to build, you are to have families, you are to reproduce, and then God will restore you. Um, and it's interesting
Yeah.
because
And
here,
to work for the common good of the community.
absolutely, the land that God has taken you into captivity. And so we see that concept here that
Yeah.
even when the people aren't where they want to be, even when God hasn't fulfilled the promise completely, you still have a job. You still have something.
Right.
And you still
There's
have a way of living into that blessing that God has given you. Like even if we
yeah.
remember back to the time of Egypt, where Pharaoh is persecuting the Israelites, the people of the Israelites themselves, the children were of hardy stock, and they were often able to have children before the people were able to get there to take the babies and kill them. Like that was part of, if you will, the one of the blessings there. And so
Mhm.
in the New Testament, though, again uh, we see again new life here, and relationship. They won't labor in vain nor bear children to a world of horrors, because they will be people blessed by the Lord along with their descendants. So Jesus talks about this new heaven and this new earth that is to come. However, we also
Mhm.
see it's still not there, not in its fulfilled stage. Because Jesus even talks about
Right.
there is a time coming where the widow, um, oh, I'm going to mess up the verse. Suddenly I'm getting it wrong. I know the one I'm referring to, but the idea where Jesus says it'll be difficult for the woman who is in labor, and
Mhm.
where they will be fleeing from Jerusalem, and
Right.
this difficult time that is coming. And all in this, Jesus is recognizing that this fulfillment hasn't come yet, but it is still coming. And
Mhm.
verse 24, before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. And again, Jesus says, ask and you shall receive, right? Knock, seek and
Yeah.
you will find, knock and the door will be answered. Again, we see the relationship between Jesus and the people. Jesus is coming. Jesus is the one who is the voice here on earth of the voice from heaven that says, "This is my son with whom I'm well pleased." God incarnate, Emmanuel, God with us. So we hear the voice of God in him and through him.
Yeah.
And
And God is always waiting to answer, even
yes,
before we know we're ready to ask, right? Yeah.
and so Jesus here, we see another relationship between his ministry and this prophecy when we hear in verse 21, they will build houses and live in them, they will plant vineyards and they will eat their fruit. They won't build for others to live in, nor plant for others to eat. Like the days of a tree will be the days of my people. My chosen will make full use of their handiwork. And so here we're seeing the idea of the blessing of God's Spirit poured out upon the people to make right what was wrong. And again,
Right.
that's what Jesus is calling his disciples to be and to become, where he talks about the gates of Hades, right, will not overcome you, and this sense of that the people of God can stand strong even amongst this difficulty.
Yeah. And all of our labors, right, are to benefit the greater good. So, when it says they won't build houses for others to live in nor plant for others to eat, it doesn't mean they're not going to share. It means that they're not going to do it as slaves, as servants, right? That if I plant a garden, the fruit that that garden bears is for everyone, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you build houses, right, you're going to build houses for everybody. You're going to use your skills for the greater good. Um, and so it's everybody is looking out for the benefit of the whole kingdom, which is what blessings are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And Paul here, of course, talks about being poured out like a drink offering. So again, we
Mm-hmm.
could take that to mean, hold on, isn't then Paul's life, the example of building but not living in, planting but not reaping of? And is that no, Paul understood he was ultimately working for the kingdom of God. And so he was
Right.
working for
Yeah.
that place where he would one day believe that he would live, because he had this eschatological hope, this hope of
Yeah.
kingdom that we are building to live into. And that's where we
Right.
see that Isaiah's statement here, the fulfillment of it, the fullness of it, is the belief in the new heavens and the new earth that God is creating. That while we work up to a certain point, the ultimate fulfillment of this hope is in God himself alone. It is
Yeah.
not in our own hands and can't be.
Right.
Yeah. So Nancy, that's
Right.
all I've got in this verse. Is there anything else that I'm missing that you would love to comment on or highlight?
I think we've covered everything that I wanted to. So yeah, this is
As I just
it's
was about to close this, the one thing last that would jump out at me where it says, "The wolf and the lamb will graze together, the lion will eat straw like the ox." And it's that sense of everything being restored to its natural creative order.
mhm,
Because the lion, even eating straw like the ox, the understanding is that before the fall, that the animals didn't eat
yeah,
each other, but the
didn't
animals
kill each other. Yeah.
yeah, the animals even didn't kill each other or eat each other. But it says, but the snake, its food will be done.
Snake.
So here, the snake is still condemned. So the curse of the enemy that caused men to fall, that curse is not being removed.
Mhm,
And so it's an
right. Yeah.
interesting point there.
Yeah. That was the ones that lead others astray intentionally. Right. I mean, it's one thing if you think you know something and you lead folks in the wrong direction, but the snake in the garden did it intentionally with the purpose to turn people away from God
Mhm.
by by twisting God's words. And so that is right, that's the relationship that can't be restored because it was intentionally broken
Mhm.
with God. And so yeah.
Yeah, and so then the last line there, they won't hurt or destroy at any place on my holy mountain. So the recognition then of as the snake is removed and condemned, there is once again that restored relationship between God and man, and this time without that call for towards sin, but now actually life as it was intended to be.
Yeah.
That's it. All right,
Very
folks.
good.
Well, thanks for joining us today. God bless you. And
Yeah.
look forward to being able to continue on with our last chapter, Isaiah 66, next time. So God
All
bless you.
right. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.